Welcome to the Talking HealthTech podcast. My name is Peter Birch. Today I'm joined by Diana Pitts, CEO of Coviu, and they're no strangers to Talking HealthTech. Actually, fun fact, episode 1 of Talking HealthTech featured Sylvia from Coviu back in the day, way back in 2018, but a lot's changed in telehealth since 2018 here in 2025, and I've got Diana here to take us through the landscape of telehealth today and into the future, and maybe some tips and tricks for more clinics around Australia to incorporate it into their workflow. G'day, Diana. How are you?
Hi, Pete. Nice to be here, and thank you so much for having me. Nice to be back after Invested Number One as well.
Yeah, well, there's a few episodes sprinkled along the way, and you can check out all of those on the Talking HealthTech website. Coviu as THT Plus partners have a presence on our website there, and you can see previous episodes and all the content you've shared there. But today I'm super excited to have a chat with you because we've not spoken to you, I think, since coming into the organization. And as we've hinted to, the telehealth space continues to ramp, but it also evolves as well. Maybe if you can help us set the scene a bit more for those unfamiliar with Coviu, but also your role within it too, provide us a bit of context and intro.
Sure, happy to. So I'll give a bit of context on myself and Coviu. So I come from a family of doctors, actually, but a bit of a black sheep in the family, couldn't handle the blood. And so most of my career has been spent navigating the commercial and the impact side of things, scaling different health tech organizations. And so it's been really exciting to join Coviu, and I've been here for over a year now. Coviu itself in Australia has a really rich history. We spun out a CSRO back in 2018 as a software platform to really equip practitioners to deliver telehealth. And of course, I'm sure your listeners will be aware, but back in 2018, telehealth was not really a thing. And so really trying to do something quite innovative at the time. And we were lucky to work with some early pioneers in the health tech space as well. Obviously, with COVID, saw that huge surge in interest in telehealth. And one of the nice things that we've seen and done since is that we have shown that we can really support people across a wide range of this spectrum, from solo practitioners, small to medium practices, large enterprises, into the complex tertiary space. And we are excited to be the platform behind a number of the virtual emergency departments for states across Australia as well. We've been working on really exciting things since. I think telehealth has taken a different phase since COVID. And so we're continuing to invest in different ways to help practices deliver telehealth in a better, more efficient way. And I'm sure we'll get into some of the details as we go through the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I think back to that episode 1 of Talking HealthTech with Sylvia, and I'm sure a lot of the framing of that conversation was, tell me what telehealth is and whether it is even a viable care delivery model, and how do we actually fund the thing, because there was no funding whatsoever for telehealth unless in really specific areas. Flash forward to today, after everything that scene you've just said, it's a lot more than just trying to replicate what a physical consultation is with a clinician on a computer. It's a bit more. So we'll unpack that a little bit more in a second. If I was to reflect back on COVID specifically, which was where that point where it wasn't just a hockey stick of growth, it was almost like a brick wall of in terms of ramping up of users for Coviu. If I was to take a clinic's perspective there, what were the challenges that clinics really face when trying to do telehealth during that stage where it was kind of like, this isn't just a nice to have, this is a mission critical kind of tool?
Absolutely. And I think your analogy of the brick wall is right, because I think a lot of clinics certainly felt that way during COVID. Obviously, one of the things that happened with COVID is that it went from telehealth not being really a thing to overnight, everybody had to move over to telehealth and figure out, how do I deliver services in a completely virtual world? What can I deliver virtually? How do I get the administrative and clinic workflows to still work in this space? And I think what we saw then is a lot of people had to switch over, but it was very painful because they were looking at oftentimes off-the-shelf video conferencing tools, things like Zoom and Teams that weren't built for the clinical workflow, and trying to make it work. And so we saw lots of receptionists, admin staff, fielding the chaos of scheduling, trying to figure out how we can get appointments out to patients, and it's funny because even today, like some of the customers we talk to, they will have spreadsheets with multicolored, multiple links, just trying to manage it all. And I just think, oh my goodness, like the mess that we're causing with them for telehealth in that case. And equally, clinicians were finding themselves often as basically IT support, helping patients to get onto the platform and make sure that their cameras and mics were working, and trying to diagnose, are you on a Mac or are you on a Safari versus Chrome, and make that work. And of course, like payments and follow-up appointments were really difficult as well, because as soon as the consult was over, people would move on with their day, and then you're left with the admin staff chasing all of that up. And so I think it was quite a harrowing experience for a lot of clinics during that time. And one of the things we've been really focused on is how do we make all of this better? Because telehealth, I think, is an amazing opportunity for both clinics and patients alike. And we can't make it this hard for clinics to be doing their job. So one of the nice things since COVID is we have seen a resurgence of interest, maybe people less being forced into telehealth and more approaching it now thinking, look, there's something here. We've shown that we can do it, but now we want to do it more in a smarter way and in a more efficient way as well.
Yeah. Because I think about it from when I think about seeing a specialist or something, that there's different levels of appetites for digital use or digital literacy that clinics may have. And, my particular specialist might think, well, if I'm just giving you an update, I'm going to pick up the phone and give them a call. I don't need to spin up an online thing to kind of check in on how things are going. You mentioned that there's, this isn't just you need to do this now, otherwise you don't get paid. It's clinics are finding there's gaps in the way that they can see patients remotely or in person for that matter.
Mm.
I'd love to understand a little bit more like what those gaps are, or because it's obviously coming out of a need. Like what is that need, and where are clinics kind of going with this? What are they asking for?
Yeah, sure. So it's funny because a lot of people do think that when it's telehealth, it's just about the practitioner and the patient, but there's no clinical workflow and no care delivery that really happens in just that isolation. So one of the classic things we hear is, okay, well, the patient may have jumped on a scheduling link. They're waiting for the practitioner, not sure if they've arrived or not. Patient's feeling a bit anxious. And all of a sudden they call the receptionist and say, hey, is the practitioner coming online? When will we be expecting them? Or equally, perhaps the practitioner has jumped onto the link first themselves, patient's not there. They wait 5 minutes. Is the patient coming? They call the receptionist, say, can you chase up the patient? It takes 5 minutes to get them set up on their tech systems before they jump on the call. And of course, that's 10 minutes of the day that just pushes the entire book of appointments out. And it's just really inefficient for people. And even things like I mentioned, the spreadsheet with the multiple Zoom links, when you have something like a Zoom link or a Meet link or whatever it might be, it's a unique link each time. And so for clinics to be able to do scheduling even, they need to open up Zoom, set up the link, copy and paste it into the appointment book. Of course, patients never, schedule and reschedule appointments. So inevitably, when that happens, they need to go back into the Zoom app, reschedule it, copy and paste it over, and keep it updated. But errors happen, links change, people make mistakes, and then all of a sudden that's an appointment lost and you haven't been able to deliver care. And so one of the things that we've really tried to solve for is, if you imagine yourself in a brick and mortar practice, you would see patients entering into the waiting area. You'd be able to meet them, greet them, do any intake, any triage that's required, pass them over to the clinician, and then at the end of it, pass them back to reception for any follow-up actions or payments. And in a telehealth world, most video conferencing tools that aren't set up for clinical workflows, they miss out on that entire visibility. If I were meeting with you as a practitioner, no one would ever know that we've even met. And so that's what we're really trying to solve here. We're really trying to help practices deliver telehealth better by bringing that visibility back to the telehealth context so that you can have the same visibility, you can have the same workflows receptionists can see who's arrived and importantly who hasn't arrived so that they can actually proactively chase them. We've got a built-in pre-call workflow that allows patients to self-support to get onto the platform with no downloads required. They can get their own audio and video sorted. At the end of the call with the clinician, there's an easy way for them to transfer the patient back to the receptionist for any follow-up actions as well. So really just giving people the visibility and tools that they need to run their practice as if it were an in-person practice.
Yeah, look, I think about my own situation in our family. There's a recurring specialist appointment with one of the family members, and sometimes it's in person and some of it's virtual.
Mm,
But I'm just thinking about, and I haven't even put the, sometimes, I wear my Talking HealthTech hat is,
yeah.
like the innovative world of healthcare technology. And then you got your real world hat of this is healthcare on a day to day. And the particular clinician, their process for virtual consultations is a mix of PDF information, emails from the receptionist from two different email addresses for some reason, a Zoom link that I've just saved the details on like an Apple Note, just because I know that that's the one that we're going to need to use. And there's just a lot of anxiety in the lead up to that particular appointment. It is handy that we don't have to go to the other side of Sydney for it, but yeah, I think about what we do to be able to just facilitate quite a routine
Mm,
appointment. For those that aren't too familiar with managing their own workflow of a
sure.
patient on this end, that could be tricky. I could see how a number of appointments just wouldn't go ahead, or and more commonly, I would think, well, from a clinic's point of view, that whole process sounds super messy to do. So it's like, oh, we're just not going to do the virtual thing. And as you kind of alluded to, that doesn't just mean, well, hey, everyone's going to come into the clinic now. That's super easy. It's a lot of people just won't get care.
That's right. That's right. And it's amazing. Like some of the diagrams I've seen these clinics hack together, and kudos to them because it's very innovative.
Sure.
But for instance, they've got a diagram sometimes where it's like, okay, well, this is the Zoom link, and then we've got 10 breakout rooms. And so we need to make sure there's no overlap in which breakout room is being used. But of course, the person who's masterminded this, as soon as they're out sick, as soon as they're out on leave, no one can pick it up again. And
Mm.
so it's just way too complex. And we just think it doesn't need to be this complex because we are talking about patient care here. And we want to make sure that the systems are set up to help people deliver telehealth instead of just all these disorganized systems, fragmented systems that don't talk to the PMS that get in people's ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I could riff more on my own experiences, but that's not the point of this episode. But it does give a lot of context. I'm sure many people listening or watching this episode would have their own experiences too. Hey, something else people might have experienced with telehealth, because it's not just so back when let's take 2018, episode 1 of Talking HealthTech, when we're speaking about telehealth and how we deliver it. It was always that there are bricks and mortar clinics that you could go in and see in person, but sometimes you could also do a virtual consult with them or a telehealth consult with them. These days, telehealth can be delivered by a number of different clinical providers. I guess there's those that are bricks and mortar clinics that can see they've got their existing patient cohorts. There are many other providers too that are pure telehealth, and that they're just they only provide telehealth services. It's an online module, and it's kind of almost like an on-demand type healthcare you can get because you saw an Instagram ad or something, so you can get a medical
Mm.
certificate or whatever. So that changing nature, it probably comes out of a few things of consumer demand, or at least what companies think that consumers are after. How is that impacted? Because I guess that's telehealth too. How is that kind of type of healthcare impacted what telehealth is?
Yeah, sure. I think it's really, I mean, the beautiful thing about telehealth, especially over COVID, is I think it's opened up the eyes of both consumers as well as clinics as to what's possible. So, certainly, I think a lot more patients are keen to do the telehealth method. And you see that whether it's people who are more vulnerable and harder to reach out to, for instance, people with disability, older people, or another classic example that I hear all the time is young parents who just don't want to deal with the hassle of bringing their kids to the appointment while one is sick and the other one they're trying to keep soothed. But also for clinics as well, I think it's opened up a lot of opportunities for them to think about how they can operate quite differently. So we've got a couple of really fascinating customers that are doing quite innovative and different things with telehealth because of what it enables. for instance, the nice thing about telehealth is you don't have to get started with renting an expensive building and all the infrastructure costs of that. So there's an organization called All Psychiatry. They started off as being virtual only. It saved them a lot of time and effort just to start delivering care because they were able to get clinicians to start delivering care with just, a website, Coviu, and their webcam. And they've been so successful now that they're actually now starting their own day hospital as a consequence, which is just a really exciting way to say, how can we get started and start delivering care first, establish a name for ourselves, and then when we're ready, we can go back and invest in the brick and mortar side of things, which is probably the inverse of what a lot of other clinics have done. Another great example would be Subiderm, which are based out in Perth. And the exciting thing for them is, before when we were in a brick and mortar context, you could only see as many patients and be limited to the amount of physical space in your practice. And what they've managed to do is they've been able to expand their footprint in their practice without necessarily, increasing their rent and getting yet another consultation room. And so what they've done is they've just stacked up all the remote appointments into a single day and reserved the rooms really just for the in-person consults. And that can be a huge opportunity for clinics to, extend hours, offer more flexibility there. My sister-in-law actually has medical practice in regional Wagga Wagga herself as well. And it's a challenge for them because if they're working, for instance, part-time as a practitioner, well, you can't get another practitioner to fill in the rest of the hours because someone's wrapped up at 3:30. Can you really get a practitioner to come in to operate just 3:30 to 5? It just doesn't work. And so it just allows for a lot of flexibility and creativity to be able to think outside that brick and mortar context.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of good reasons why clinics might be thinking about implementing telehealth. Like implementing anything within a business setting, particularly healthcare, it can be a bit of a daunting process to get started and do it properly. Or it sits on that long to-do list of things that we probably need to do better. And occasionally you kind of find a patchwork solution. But Diana, if you had advice, maybe 3 top tips for a clinic who's looking to implement telehealth services properly, what would they be?
Yeah, great question. The first question I would start with is, are you offering telehealth currently at the moment? And if you're not, could it actually add something to your practice? We see lots of opportunities for people to expand their reach, whether it's geographically, extending care hours, without necessarily increasing overheads like things like rent. The other thing we do find too is lots of people have been able to get more efficiency out of the telehealth appointments because you don't have as much dead time. So one of our customers, Max at Whitebridge Medical, for instance, they've managed to take their average appointment length down from 19 minutes to an average 12 minutes an appointment, which is basically like 70 appointments a week that you can see in addition to what you previously did, which, you can use it to see patients, you can use it to have your life back. It just allows so much more flexibility. And so if you're not offering telehealth, where you're just offering it a little bit here and there, I would first of all encourage clinics to think through the question, could I get more benefit by offering telehealth and folding that into the practice, especially when we think about consumer expectations and changes there. You don't want to be left with an aging patient book where you're not attracting the young people who are going to fill your books tomorrow. So really thinking about what the benefits are. And then if you are offering telehealth, I would ask the question, well, are you doing it in a really efficient way? I think lots of tools out there, whether it's the Zoom and Teams we talked about, or even the FaceTime, it's quite disconnected. It doesn't allow for the clinician and the receptionist and the admin staff to work together. So how are you streamlining your appointments? How are you getting that done? How are your no-shows and bad debt? Is that under control, or is it creeping up over time? One of the fascinating things we found is one of the customers I was talking to, they've got maybe about 25% of their practice is telehealth. Right now they're doing it via FaceTime, but bad debt is actually, majority of the bad debt is due to telehealth. And so that's just not a sustainable way of working. And we hear that over and over again because a lot of these tools just aren't designed for that end-to-end workflow and visibility over the clinic. So really thinking about, if you're offering telehealth, is it efficient? And really thinking through, lastly, like, are you set up to scale? Ultimately, the platform you choose should support your offering, not slow you down. So you do want something that integrates into clinical workflows, that can tie back into your PMS, where you can set it, forget it, and don't worry about it. And so I would really encourage clinics to think about all of that. One of the things that we do, a lot of clinics who are getting started, is we do offer them some time to actually work through what their end-to-end telehealth process currently is. And we talk them through what it could look like in a different world as well. And one of the funny things is a lot of people are just surprised. They tell us, wow, we didn't even know that a different way of doing things was possible. And so we're always really happy to have that conversation with any clinics that are interested in telehealth.
Yeah, I can't see why it would be a bad idea for any clinic to be in touch with Coviu to kind of walk through, well, this is how we do telehealth or virtual services now, or even we don't do any at all. Like, what are we missing here? Given the amount of consultations that have gone through your platform and the experience within the group, that seems like a bit of a no-brainer. And one thing I do like as well, Coviu has got always an eye on what's happening next, and always building out new parts, and not just building tech for the sake of it. If anything, pushing the technology behind the scenes so that the clinicians can do more clinicianing. What's on the radar? What can we look forward to see from Coviu? What are you guys working on over the next 6, 12, 24?
Yeah, well, there's lots of exciting things coming down the pipe for us. So we started off as a video conferencing platform, but one of the things that we are building into the platform as well is phone. It has the same issue. What we find in Australia is, depending on the specialty, probably more so GPs than others, but there are a lot of telehealth consultations that are still operating off of phone, but you have the same issue. You have the issue that there's no visibility, no one can see it. There's also the dynamic often where if you're a clinician making the phone call, you have to hope that there's a patient picking up the phone on the other line. And so we're bringing that visibility back and integrating it into the platform. And one of the funny things we hear too is, there are a lot of clinics that are making phone telehealth consultations via their mobile. And of course, doctors try to put their phones on private to make sure that it doesn't cause any issues. Never happens perfectly. And so when that one time it slips up, all of a sudden you've got patients heading you directly in your personal line, which isn't great for anybody's work-life balance in allowing people to, do the clinicianing, as you mentioned as well. So that phone piece and really having that all-in-one video and phone solution all in one place. The other thing that we've been looking at, of course, it's very hot at the moment, AI medical scribe. And to be honest, at the very beginning, we weren't sure whether or not we wanted to enter this space because we thought, look, there are other tools out there. Should we be playing in this space? But one of the things we realized is there are actually quite a lot of gaps in this space, especially if you're trying to offer telehealth. The way that you have to use it often is with these AI medical scribes. You have to either put your video consult on speaker or your phone consult on speakerphone. Not a great option for people to respect privacy, especially if you're operating in a busy clinic. And so what we've got is we've built an AI medical scribe that integrates seamlessly with our video and phone and also works in an in-person context as well. And some of the other things what we have identified along the way is, the topic of consent. How do you make that something that you can do proactively, but also have the record around and make it really seamless? So we've built consent into our flow so that it's really easy for people to get started. Patients get asked for consent as part of the process. We capture it, we log it for you, so you just don't have to worry about it as a clinician. Really make sure that it's front of mind. You can just focus on care while we take care of that for you. And one of the interesting things as well is because we are a video conferencing platform and a phone conferencing platform, unlike in person where you can't distinguish between the two channels, there's either consent or no consent. One of the things that we're able to do is, like, even if a patient doesn't provide consent, we can actually still do an AI summary based on what the clinician says and still offer them support for their workflow as well to enable them to be more efficient. So it both respects the consent piece from the patient, whether or not they choose to offer it, but also gives clinicians a lot of benefits in terms of optimizing their workflow as well. So those are just some of the things that we have coming down the pipeline. There's much more to come as well, but these are some of the exciting things that we're doing that we think will deliver great impact for clinics.
Hey, Diana, that last one, it sounded a bit niche, but that actually is really exciting. That's a really good point in that it's that's one thing I've always thought about in terms of um the what it opens up by doing a telehealth consultation, given the fact that everything is is digital. So you've in terms of efficiency and tracking, how like the time involved with different people and the steps through a process and all of that, assuming using the platform right, capturing the notes from a consultation and the incorporation of an AI of your AI scribe into that process makes a lot of sense. And that's kind of cool that it retro integrates into an in-person consultation as well. But that point that you got the patient and the consult and the clinician on two separate channels, then you could record the clinician and not the patient. That makes you couldn't do that otherwise. I just find that really cool. So that's I always learn something new in these conversations. And I definitely encourage others to get in touch with Coviu to learn more about the evolving world of telehealth and how to incorporate it into their clinical setting. Also, I know you work a lot with different vendors in the ecosystem, and that's super important with that integration piece you mentioned earlier too. So lots of the Talking Health Tech audience can check out the Coviu listing on our website for more information and get in touch. But Diana, I really appreciate you making time for the conversation today. Look forward to doing it again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Nice to be here.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Talking Health Tech. Make sure you like and subscribe and share this episode with someone who might find it valuable. For more information and resources about healthcare innovation, visit talkinghealthtech.com.